Shalom. This is Reb Yoseph Schreiber coming to you from the land of Israel. Today I completed Seder Moed in the Mishnah. It's the second book of the Mishnah, and it deals with the Jewish holidays. I am learning it for the ascent of the soul, Ali and the Shama, of my next door neighbor, Dave Hoffman. I've already learned one Seder in his memory. This is the second one. It's the second of six. It's gone quite smoothly. I consider it a merit on his part that it's gone quite well, and I plan to continue. Hopefully it can become a regular thing, and that I'll be able to learn the Mishnah like I know how to daven, that it'll be very fluent in my tongue, and that I'll really understand it quite well. Generally speaking, there's two ways of learning. One's called Bekias, and the other one's called Be'iyun. In Be'iyun, what you're basically doing is you sit down, you learn it, and you try to get it all clear, and that you basically know it after you're done. When you're talking about Bekias, the idea is just to cover ground. You say, look, my eyes have seen it. I've tried to get a basic understanding of it. It's not coming so quick or easy. I'll get it the next time. The idea of Bekias means, implies you have to repeat it many times. So you'll say, well, I might have to do this 101 times before I really know it. Okay? That's essentially the approach I'm taking right now with the Mishnah. Moed, it's a form of the word aid or edut, which means witness or to testify or testimony, or as in a testimonial dinner. The idea of the Jewish holidays, at least in part, is that we're trying to make a point. We're being rabbis. Israel is being a rabbi for all the nations of the world, and we're trying to teach them a moral lesson from these Jewish holidays. They'll see us keeping these holidays, they'll ask us about them, and we'll explain just what they mean, and we'll say, these are great ideas. Not only should we keep them properly, but you should inculcate those ideas into your daily lives as well. That's the idea of the word moed, and it also means a time. A holiday is also another usage of it, and that's what Seder Moed is about. Now you have different renditions of the Talmud, or I should say the Mishnah in this case. What I am looking at right now is the standard edition, or one of the standard editions. I'll hold it up. Let's see if I can get this nice. I think that's it. Let's see. Yeah. Looks pretty good. And what you'll see in the middle, in the bold, prominent print, that's the Mishnah. Okay, on the inside is a major commentary called the Bartanura, and on the outside is another major commentary, not as important as the Bartanura, called the Tosfos Yom Tov. Okay, the Bartanura came to Jerusalem around the year 1488, major figure in the settlement of Eretz Israel in modern times. And he wrote a commentary on the Mishnah, and it's the principal explanation of the Mishnah that is used today. Now, You had a later commentary, this one is like in the 1950s, by a man named Pinchas Kahati, where he wrote it in modern Hebrew. This is the often how the book looks. I'll open it up. This is Moed. Okay, and on top, what you'll see is the Mishnah, and on the bottom, you'll see what he wrote. Now, in his case, he wrote it in modern Hebrew, and he basically wrote it in literary form. This is different from the Bartanura, who kind of writes it in note fashion. It's his notes on the Mishnah. The Bartanura has polished it up into a proper piece of literature. It's a lot more lucid to read the Bartanura. However, to read Kahati, however, the Bartanura is the classical source, and he's generally more popular for various reasons in the Beis Midrash. Now you have another one. This one's for English speakers, and this is the Blackman Mishna. Holding it up. Okay, and this one, the copyright date is 1963, and what he does is he has the Mishnah and in Hebrew and English side by side. It's called a linear translation, and then he wrote notes. Okay, the notes would be right here. Okay, where he's explaining the Mishnah in modern day English. Okay, his explanations are not as lucid as Kahati, but they do have the advantage of being in English, plus the fact of it being a linear translation helps very much. Okay, I use all three. My personal preference tends to be for Kahati, but at times my command of Hebrew is not sufficient to understand it, so rather than cracking my teeth on the Hebrew, I just use the English, and I use the English one extensively, and I use it proudly as well. Okay, now, there are a number of Masechtas in Seder Moed. So I recall there's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm sorry, 12. Okay? Now, the first one is Shabbos. Now, Shabbos is the first of the Jewish holidays, and it's unique in that this one is purely from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The bulk of the material is defining what is permitted and forbidden on Shabbos. Now, the idea of Shabbos is you're supposed to take a break from work. Do no work. Do no labor. Okay? And the Chumash does not specifically flesh out all of the details what really constitutes work. Okay? The Mishnah is the first step to say, all right, you can't plow your fields, or you can't go shopping, and you can't take a haircut. But if someone's is sick and about to die, you give them whatever medicines and cures that you need. Okay, it's that type of thing. It comes out that there's 4 basic four basic categories of labor. It's in the seventh parak, the seventh chapter, Klal Gadol, second Mishnah. But it's 39 categories of work, but it's the four categories that are much more understandable, specifically making bread from plowing the fields to grow wheat until actually baking it. Can't do any of that stuff, okay? Then it's clothing, two types of clothing, basically wool clothing, starting with fleecing the sheep and then spinning thread, weaving it into cloth, and sewing it all together. All that you can't do. Then you have another clothing, which is basically leather processing, which is a chemical process where it revolves around taking the hide of an animal and putting it basically into lime to convert it to leather, and then basically going from the hide from an animal that you just slaughtered and skinned to actually making it into, say, something that you could use for shoes. The fourth category would be construction, building a house, okay? The labors that go into that. The idea of the testimony of Shabbos is that there is a creator who created the world, that the world didn't just happen by accident or create itself. There wasn't just a big bang and that was basically the beginning. There was somebody who set off the big bang. Blessed is he who spoke and there was a world. We don't say that the world just was here all the time, is eternal. Those are the basic ideas of the testimony of Shabbos. The next one is Eruvim, which is kind of difficult to translate. It often means combinations. And what you're dealing with basically is the fuzzy or blurry issues revolving around working as it relates to Shabbos. A big one would be the idea of pickups and deliveries. Obviously, trucking and transportation is part of construction, of doing the things to keep your body alive. Okay. However, there may not be much difference between that and, say, taking your a book to shul. Okay, so Eruving tries to clarify that type of thing. Traveling, you're not supposed to travel on Shabbos. But, to go outside your house, well, you say, well, what's the difference between walking to shul a quarter of a mile away and walking to the next town that's 5 miles away? So that's another issue. Another issue is the issue of cooking, which we'll start getting into another section called Beitzah, which is what is permitted and forbidden on Yom Tov. Now, the basic issue between them is that there is no difference except for cooking. And when you start talking about cooking, the laws on Shabbos can be quite bothersome about that. And you start getting into an issue of saying, to do all these laws concerning eating on Shabbos, it's more of a bother to do them than it is to cook and prepare food. Okay, and the books that you will see packed into an Orthodox synagogue have an answer. They say we're trying to make a point. We're demonstrating a point that by putting coffee, instant coffee, dry into a cup, and then taking another cup and going to the urn, filling that cup with hot water, and then pouring that hot water onto the coffee coffee grains, coffee powder. We're making a point. We are not cooking. Okay? Therefore, we're willing to make that point on Shabbos, okay? Even though it's a bother, but to tell others that you really have to take a day off, we'll do it. Okay? That's the basic idea. But on Yom Tov, we're not going to go out of our way to make that point. We're just going to cook we're going to lighten up on cooking. That's the basic idea. And Eruvin is trying to deal with that issue. Okay, the next one is Psachim. And that is basically dealing with the laws of Pesach. The basic testimony is the importance of freedom. Okay, the Mishnah itself deals a lot with, again, defining what is chometz and what is matzah. Okay, also the idea of the Pesach sacrifice, which would be more precisely the Seder, the meal on Pesach. The idea of this Pesach sacrifice is basically the idea of like a rock festival, where you're all going to Jerusalem and you're all having this celebration together. And the Pesach it's the same name as the holiday, but that's the meal. You're going to be having lamb chops for the meal. Okay, that's the basic idea, and it goes into all of the details of setting up this meal in Jerusalem. The idea of the sacrifice is, so to speak, it's similar to the idea of the cup of Elijah the prophet on the table, that we're expecting Elijah to come through the door and join our meal. Okay, the idea of the sacrifice itself is, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is joining us in our meal, and we're in His house. That's the idea. The last chapter of it, though, is extremely interesting in that it actually deals with the laws of how to set up a Pesach Seder. And the way that we do it today, we have a Haggadah, and that's basically the Haggadah of Sadia Gaon. And then everybody, once he set up his Haggadah, everybody started using it with a few minor changes here and there. Okay? In the case of Sadia Gaon, he looked at the Mishnah, and the Mishnah basically gives the outline that you have to have 4 cups, that you have of wine, that you drink, that you have matzah and maror, and you say the story of Pesach. Okay, in the Chumash, it specifically goes into saying the story of Pesach. It says you have to recount the story of the Exodus, and you have to eat matzah and maror, so to speak, a starch and vegetables, some salad, lettuce. That's what the Chumash says. It doesn't actually give you a text of what you're supposed to recount about the Exodus from Egypt. The Haggadah we have right now does give you the text. You just read it and you're told the story. You don't have to worry about it. That's enough. Okay? The Mishnah here basically doesn't give you the text, but it gives you an outline. So to speak, you can say, well, I'll use this outline and I'll take it from there on my own. Okay? Today, though, the general practice, though, is to just go through the Haggadah. Okay? The next one is shekalim. A shekel is, in this case, shall we say, a coin or money. Okay? it's actually biblical that you have to donate a half a shekel, say half a dollar or half a shekel if you live in Israel, okay, to the temple. And the take of the Mishnah on this is that it's meant to be used for public works. It's basically a tax. It's a head tax. And it's used for doing things like fixing the roads and fixing things that are basic to the needs of the people, specifically the people who are going to be traveling to Jerusalem to observe the holidays. It goes into that in detail. The next one is Yoma, as in Yom Kippur, and that deals with the laws of Yom Kippur, specifically that you're supposed to fast and what constitutes fasting, what happens if you really are sick and you have to eat, what constitutes really being sick. Okay? And it fleshes out the various situations. It also, the liturgy for Yom Kippur in the Matzor goes into the service of the high priest on Yom Kippur, and the liturgy basically is a paraphrase of the Mishnah. Specifically, you had the mitzvah of the scapegoat, where you'd get two goats, and this goat is going to be a sin offering. This other goat, we're going to basically throw it off a cliff in the wilderness. Say that basically you have two paths. You can dedicate your life to God, or you can be a savage. This is actually from the Chumash, but again, it fleshes out the actual details of how to do that. The next one is Sukkah. Again, it's the laws of Sukkot, remembering the time that the Jewish people spent in the desert. And it talks about how to make a sukkah. Now, you're supposed to dwell in a sukkah. But the Chumash doesn't say, well, what exactly is a sukkah? Well, you got the word, it's kind of a hut. Okay? So what the Mishnah starts saying is, well, basically it's got two main components. It's got walls and it's got schach, shall we say, a roof. And you basically have to use branches or something similar to that to the roof. You cannot make it into a proper roof. The walls, it also says, well, how high they can be, or what's too high. It can't be more than esrim amma. Then an amma is basically your forearm, say 1.5 feet. To make it's 30 feet high. It's too high. It's not a sukkah. Okay. It also can't be less than 10 tefachim. A tefach is, shall we say, a fist. Okay. So 10 hand breadths. Say 2 feet. If it's less than 2 feet, it's too small. Also, with the size, the minimum size, it has to at least be able to fit your head and your table and the majority of your body. Okay, so it's that type of things. It also deals with the lulav and the esrog. That they can't be dried out, they can't be stolen. Okay, it has to be a nice looking plant. In the last chapter actually deals with something called the Simchas Beit Shoeva, where it's a celebration. You're supposed to celebrate and have parties on Sukkot, and it talks about the celebrations in Jerusalem. Okay, and it's basically a story. It's not halach. It's a story about how beautiful they were, and how the children of the priests would be pouring oil into, shall we say, the lamps. It was oil lamps. You didn't have electrical lamps. It's as I said, it's a very nice chapter. If you just simply read it in English, you can just go to the last chapter in Sukkah and you'll find it. It makes for nice reading. The next one is Beitzah, which again I mentioned before are the laws of Yom Tov, where it's basically dealing with the difference between eating and not eating, but cooking. What are the leniencies that you have for Yom Tov that are the things that are strict on Shabbos? After that, you have Rosh Hashanah, and it starts off with the idea of a Rosh Hashanah, the New Year's, and it starts out with there's different types of New Year's, just like in America, there's the new school year, there's the new car year, you also have January 1st, which is the new year for the calendar, you have the Jewish New Year, and you have this as well, you have the New Year of Trees, Tu B'Shavat, okay, and you have Passover, which starts the first month of the calendar, and Tishrei, which is the new year for where you count the years, 57, 76 right now from the creation of the universe. It also goes into the sounding of the shofar, which is the basic ritual observance of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, it's basically the idea of the tekiah, the long blast, the shvarim, the three relatively short blasts, and the 9 beats of teruah. It fleshes that out, how often you have to sound the shofar. What constitutes a shofar? It's an animal horn. Okay, so there's different types of animals. There's different types of animal horns. The Mishnah actually says, well, this type of animal makes a kosher shofar, this one doesn't. So you know what type of shofar to have. The next one is Tainis, which is the fast days. Now, the principal fast days that are mentioned in this is the 9th of Av and the 17th of Tammuz, which are remembrances for the destruction of the temples. However, the major subject of it is fasting during times of trouble, particularly during times of drought. And this is where it's very focused on the land of Israel, where rain is very important, where it starts saying, well, if it hasn't rained by such and such a time, then Tzaddikim begin to fast, and if it hasn't rained and it's late in the season, then everybody fasts. And also the liturgy for the fast, and also things like what types of business you should be able to do. Okay, which is related again to what I'm coming up to, Moed cotton. That's not the next one. It's where that's the laws of Chol HaMoed, where again it's talking about limiting business. The next one actually after this one is Megillah, which is Purim, reading the Megillah. What constitutes a kosher Megillah? When do you read it? And okay, if you're talking about in America, everybody reads it on the 14th of Adar. Okay? Even in America, it starts becoming an issue where you're dealing with a leap year, which comes 7 times in a course of 19 years, fairly common, like almost every 3 years. okay, where you have two Adars. You have Adar and Adar base. Often the encyclopedias misunderstand that they say Vader, which is Va'adar, okay? Va'adar means and Adar, and it should be and Adar base, okay? But it's the second Adar, and Purim is in the second Adar. Okay, if there is no second Adar, then it's in the first Adar. And it goes into also the other mitzvahs in Purim, giving charity to the poor, having a festive meal, giving trick or treats to your friends. That is basically what Megillah is about. All of the Masechtas have side and related issues. The next one is Moed Katan, which is the laws of Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of Passover and Sukkot. Okay, and the basic idea with them is that those are the days that you do vacation and you have reduced work on them. In other words, you really shouldn't be working at all on them. However, work that is necessary for the general good and the essential holiday that you would do. For instance, if you need food or clothing or something special, you could. It's appropriate for you to go to the storekeeper, who might be your neighbor, especially here in Israel, and say, "Look, I just really got to get a sack of flour to prepare my meals. I ran out. I didn't notice I was getting low on this." And he'll say, "Yeah, I'll open up the store and I'll sell it to you." Or the store will say, "Look, something like milk, it's very perishable, and people also have to be able to prepare for Shabbos. So I'll open on those days, but I'm going to do it in a low-key way, and I'm not going to have sales or that type of thing. People will come in and buy the things that they need, and that'll be it." Okay, or if it's a case where someone is very poor and their mom is going to starve unless they work, they would work. But the idea is you're supposed to be taking a break. Now is the time to go to the spa or take a tour or that type of thing. Okay, that's the idea of Moed Katan. It also has a connection with the laws of the seventh year, Shemitah, because those are the laws that's the seventh year when the salient thing is that the fields are left fallow, that you don't work the fields, but the idea is that the whole year is sabbatical. You're supposed to be taking a break during that time. However, if you're a farmer and not tending to your tree or your field during that time, means that it's going to get ruined, okay? In order to prevent damage, you would be permitted to do work. It's the same thing, again, with Chol HaMoed. You don't let things get ruined. This is the idea on Shabbos. In order to do work on Shabbos, you have to have a very good reason. If somebody's life depends on it, then you would be permitted to do work. Once you start talking about Chol HaMoed and Yom Tov, it becomes more a case of, if not doing this work will either result in a significant loss, some damage, or significant aggravation to yourself or to others, then there's room to be more lenient. You're not actually trying to make a point on the other two, especially Chol Chol HaMoed, that we are not working. On Shabbos, you are making that point. So as a result, you have different applications and manifestations of the law. The last one is Chagiga, and it's the language of festival, and it refers to the festival offering that a Jew would bring to the temple. Again, the word is sacrifice, which unfortunately has become to mean the burnt offering, when in fact there were many other sacrifices, and most likely that was not the most common sacrifice, even though it was extremely common. The idea again of the chagiga is that you're going to have meat, you're going to have steak, okay, or lamb chops as your festive meal on Yom Tov. Okay. However, you're going to make a show that this is a religious observance, and you're in doing that, you're going to offer part of the animal on the mizbeh, basically the parts that you don't eat, blood and suet. Okay, you're also going to give a piece to the priest, so to speak. They're partaking of your meal. The whole idea of shechita in the temple, so to speak, is to say, you have to kill this animal, and maybe you'll all be better off if we were vegetarians. But if you try to do that, you're going to have malnutrition and you're going to be miserable because you just can't eat all these plants all the time for most people. However, you have to kill the animal in a reasonable way. So shechita is the most reasonable way we have to kill the animal. Killing is cruel no matter what you do it, but it's certainly better than shooting it with a gun or a bow and arrow, or digging a hole and maybe putting spikes on the bottom so the animal falls in it, or a rope that catches the animal and strangles it. I could go into all sorts of details. The idea is that shechita is the way to do it, but it's hard to make that point, so you have to say, well, this is a religious observance, and an appeal to the great unknown with something like that. But the idea of chagiga is, again, you're supposed to have nice meals on Yom Tov, and it's supposed to be a religious observance. So it goes into the different details of bringing the festival offering. Thank you.